am Coach Carol, and excited today to have, I kind of build it as our mystery guest, so that Valerie is here to share some of her story and the transformation that she's undergone in the last, 6 months, year, she's married for 12 years with 3 children, works full-time as a veterinarian, and really has done an amazing job transforming herself and her marriage. So Valerie, would you share a little bit about how things were, maybe when we first started working and when we found each other, and the struggles, as much as you're willing to share. I hate to take you back to the pain because you've moved so far, but for the sake of the women out there, maybe that they can relate to some of what you've struggled with.
Yeah, it's okay, because thinking about things in the way that they were, I think about it like, St. Paul, how he talked about, he always had that thorn in his side, and there's always that temptation that remains to go back to the way it was, but it's getting easier and easier. But the way things was that, I was just always very angry and afraid. My biggest struggle in our relationship has always been, finances, and then also just pride about the way I think things should be done, and my husband, just doesn't do it that way, and it's not the best way, it's not the right way, and I was just always upset about it, and and it was really hard. All of this, technically, disrespect spilled over in a lot of different areas of our lives, from the way he, handles the kids differently from me, the way he handles money, the way he interacts with his in-laws or his parents. It just spilled everywhere. And it was pretty much impossible for me to be grateful about anything, to see anything positive, to see anything to be grateful for, because I was so focused, like hyper-focused, on all the ways that he did things wrong. And, I'm in this place because he is this, he is that. Everything was always his fault. There wasn't really, any blame on my end. And I would complain about this kind of stuff to other people and get all kinds of reinforcement for the way I thought and saw things from people around me. And it was just really tough. And I had this counselor that we went to together a few times, but anytime we went to a counselor together, it always just ended up being like this reinforcement of the way I see things, and my husband's a horrible person, and I'm, the smart one, the responsible one, etc. And it was just a bash my husband session, and lift Valerie up to perfect session. And I think about that sometimes, and I just get so sad about, I don't know, just how I did that. And anyways, we had a good counselor, though. She's a Catholic therapist, and I was working with her individually because I couldn't get my husband to go do anything with me anymore, and don't blame him after all of his experiences. And she mentioned to me one day, because I would talk things out with her, I would always end up feeling better, but then it was the question always remained but what do I do? What do I do to make it different? Sure, I've talked about it. Sure, I've talked through it, but what do I do? And she kind of said to me, she's like, I really don't know what to do for you anymore, but I have some clients who read this Empowered Wife book who said that they really finally see a difference in their marriages. And then there was another Monica St. Wives group, some of y'all might be in it, another woman in there mentioned it again, within a week, and I was like, well, this must mean something. And so I went and, got the book from the library. I only read maybe a couple of two or three chapters into it, and then I was like, well, all the self-help stuff, I said, I need to actually have someone walk with me and help me do this. I'm not strong enough, I felt, or to be consistent. I needed someone to help me be, what's the word, held accountable, to do it. And what better way than to pay somebody else, money, and that will definitely get me on board, to do it, because here I was, the responsible one, never wanted to spend any money, and always husband's fault that we don't have any money, but I never did anything for myself, was getting so resentful. And then I just came up to my husband and I said, I'm really tired of feeling like this, and this is something I want to do. And he was 100% supportive, and so I've been working with Carol for the past 6 months, and it's been the best investment into myself that I've ever made. And I don't even notice that the money is gone. It's so great. And I keep bringing money up because it's a big part of me and how I don't like to spend anything, and it just feels so good to have gone from just neglecting myself to doing something like this. But anyways.
I hear that, like you struggled with the anger and the resentment. You're not alone. I struggled with that as well, and a lot of women do. So how would you say things are now?
They're a lot better, and it's not really so much that my husband has changed. It's more like, I've changed the way I handle everything and the way I look at things. I still get bursts of, or little hints of anxiety and fear that creep up, but now I know how to handle those feelings and those emotions. And as far as I knew, it's like before, it's just I didn't know how to do that. It's very strange, and learning how to think through them and understand where they're coming from, and being able to decide, is it okay to feel that way or not? Because that's another thing with me, is that I would always struggle with a lot of shame for feeling as angry as I did with him. Then I never knew how to get to the bottom of, well, why do I feel so angry? And then is that thought the way, that I have about him, is it true or not? And all that kind of stuff. I never could dive into it to break it apart. And anyways, nowadays, it's just the way that I approach everything. That's what has made the hugest difference. And I'm able to see the good in him now, to be grateful, and being grateful and seeing the good now has done wonders for my emotional state, my overall attitude, being positive. They always talk about, just, be positive and whatever, happy-go-lucky. And I don't think that's really possible to do genuinely if you're not genuinely grateful. You can pretend to be happy and smiling and whatnot, but you're not actually happy. You're going to eventually, fall into a resentment kind of attitude. But for me, I've noticed that being able to be grateful is the biggest part of the foundation towards being a happy wife. And you can't be grateful if you're being critical all the time. You really can't. So yeah, so that's the biggest change I see right now for me in our marriage.
Yeah, well, and I love like what you're saying is that like that thought swapping really didn't work. Like just to thought swap it. So part of what I teach and is being able to take your thoughts through the reason cycle, so that you can actually be empowered to figure out, is this thought even serving me? Like what is this? And because your thoughts are optional. And so to be able to choose thoughts that are serving you. And I hear that you're choosing grateful thoughts, which is really helping you to show up in a better, more empowered way for yourself and for Daniel and your family. And so, and I bet that it even rolls into your work, right? Like if this work, this transforming ourselves, it's not to change our husbands or to get what we want. Really, it's about our whole life and becoming the best version of ourselves. And so it sounds like you've really, and I've witnessed it in the last 6 months, huge shifts for you, Valerie. And I really acknowledge your strength and courage, your humility, right? Being willing to do this, being willing to really to dive within. And so, this isn't easy work, and not everybody wants to look at what they bring to the table. Like you said, it's far easier to keep blaming him.
Yeah, it was a really dark place when I found you. It was kind of like, the idea of relinquishing control and all of that, it just terrified me. It still is scary every now and then right now, and I still struggle with really entering into what relinquishing control means, but I know that I'm getting closer and closer every day. I just think about how 6 months ago, and for the past 10, 11 years before 6 months ago, I used to pray and hope that one of us would just die. It was really bad that one of us would just die already, so that I could, just live the way I wanted, or he could just live the way he wanted. And that was a very, very macabre and sad thought. And it just terrified me to feel that way. And that I felt that way. And bringing it to confession was a big, big step. It in and of itself wasn't a sin, but it was a very sinful mindset, and I was entering into it deeply and believing it. And I don't know how many of you feel that way in your situations. I'm pretty sure a lot of women feel this at some point, like there's no way out except for someone to just keel over, and it's not true at all. And now it's like whenever I start to, there are hills and valleys in this as well. I remember in one of our coaching sessions, I talked about how it's like, you get really high up on the wave, you feel really good about what you're doing, and then you get into a trough. But the trough, as you go with time, it's not that they're never going to be there, but they definitely get shallower, and it doesn't take as much time to swim out of it. It's not like this riptide grabbing you and like you have no control, okay? So that, I feel like the biggest thing to take away from learning these skills, and moreover the skills that Carol adds to what is set forth in the Empowered Wife book, which I've honestly never finished. I just lean on Carol really this whole time, So I would say that that's the hugest thing, because just for example, last weekend, these past few weeks have been tough because I've been trying really hard to relinquish control of the finances to my husband, and sometimes the spending, just I can see it. I've built this boundary that I don't look at our checking account. I kind of liken this to, I don't know that it's this bad, because I've never experienced this before, but I know when some people, when they have a husband or a wife who has a drinking problem, and you become obsessed with looking to see if they've had a drink or not. And that's how I was with the finances, and it became like my addiction, obsession, looking at the checking account all the time, looking for evidence, looking to see what did he do now to ruin my life, And so that's one big thing that I've done the past, I think, for at least 4 months. There was one time where I accidentally saw it. I have not looked at our checking account, and I'm the breadwinner, so it's easy for me to kind of be like, pride in this, like, hey, it's my money, whatever. But I've definitely opened this space for him to be a hero here. But anyways, this past week has been a trough, I'll admit, with some spending, and my brain is trying to sink back into old thoughts and looking for evidence and stuff. But it's very easy for me to come out of that. It don't just spiral out of control. What I do is I take a step back and realize, hey, if I keep going on this route of being critical and looking for all the bad, I leave no room to see the good. And there's so much that I can see now that God has blessed me with in this life. I've used to, and I'm always tempted to be so obsessed about what I think is going to make me happy, and what needs to happen for me to be happy, that I have been completely blind before I started this to everything that's already there that God has for me now that I have to be grateful for. And all these things, are, not only are a lot of them what I've always wished for, like beautiful children that are healthy, happy, and a wonderful husband who, even though he has a problem with saying no, that can be a good thing. I mean, all I have to do is say, I want this, and he jumps, he's waiting, always hoping that I want something, and here I am, always being, self-sacrificial, too responsible, can't have anything, and he's dying to give me everything. And it's a reflection of my trust in God, God who is dying to give us everything. But we don't believe that what he has in store for us is as good as what we can imagine. So last weekend, I was able to work through that exercise real quick I'm coming up out of the trough. I'm still kind of in it, but I'm moving up. And again, this whole way of thinking, of being able to look at the world, is what's going to get you out of those spirals. This has gotten me out of those spirals. And so I have more of a hopeful, a consistently hopeful kind of baseline, as opposed to a consistently despairing baseline, And so, anyways, it's a real journey, like Carol said. And it's been.
It's true that it is a spiritual battle. This is not just about surrendering to our husbands as much as it is to surrendering to God, and really learning how to be the best wife you can be, learning how to love the way that Christ loved. And so I know that you are always so active in our secret Facebook group, and you're always so accountable and vulnerable, and you're so aware of the spiritual aspect of it all, and that you keep turning to God, and that you can see that he's, through all of this, he's drawing you closer and closer to him every day. And you keep being willing to go deeper with him. And it's such a beautiful journey to watch, because you are so faithful. You are so faithful. And, and then what I also heard you saying is that that as much as you have an addiction to control, that you're learning that you really desire the intimacy and the connection and the happy marriage more than the control. So it's like your own internal battle of, how do I do this? And you just keep bringing God in to give you strength. And so what a beautiful journey that you're on, for sure. Yeah. So if there was a woman here listening or listens to the recording, is there what advice would you give to her?
I would say the biggest advice is just to be open to a possibility that seems terrifying to you, that actually might be the best choice. And also to remember that it doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent choice. Because I think for someone like me, it's like I have it in my mind, like the way things ought to be and how they should be done. And so when I realized, I really took a step back and was honest with myself. Hey, the way I'm doing things is not only helping the situation, it's not fostering it in the direction that I wish, like you had said, intimacy with my husband and Because I know that my big dream, if I just sat down and wrote it out on paper, I think you read it back to me last week when we were talking, was to have a happy, peaceful home where the children look at us and they see a reflection of the Holy Trinity in their parents and in their home, and for us to be, graciously giving and receiving to one another freely, just like, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit do, and that's what I want. I mean, it sounds really lofty, but I mean, that's what I want, and I think that's really what God wants for us as married people. And, I think for me, looking at the empowered wife thing, it kind of enkindled in me, realized, hey, this is a completely different direction. It's scary, but it's completely different from what I've been trying to do. And I was kind of just at that I had it place, I was like, what do I have to lose? I mean, I could do that, and if it doesn't work, then I can always go back to what I was doing or do something completely else. It's not like this altering permanent thing, and so I decided to go with it, and I'm so glad that I did, and being honest with myself that, what have I done to contribute to the current situation? It's going to be different for many different people, but whenever I'm in other Facebook groups and I hear lamenting about their marriages, it would always just make me sad that everyone was just ready to kind of create their little echo chamber. Yeah, he's a horrible person and awful, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You need to divorce him and stuff. And I was just thinking to myself, like, there's no way that there isn't one thing that this woman doesn't do that couldn't possibly be a little bit off, that could trigger these behaviors or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure there are situations where it's like, yes, there's people who are 100% evil and god awful, but it can't be so rampant. It just can't be. And as that for it to be more than 50%? Is it really that half the men in this world are so god awful evil that they're the only ones to ever blame for anything? I think that that's kind of off to me. And so when I tried to look and see how I had contributed, sure, my husband has his demons that he has, I guess, so to speak, his tendencies, his weaknesses, but don't we all? And I really love the whole concept of staying on your own paper when it comes to that, because we can drive ourselves crazy trying to fix everybody around us. And I would say that this is the perfect, or at least the best way I've been able to find to move more towards, hey, take the log out of my own eye and stop trying to take the stick out of his, So that's what I would say, just being really honest with yourself and just really look and see, what could I be doing differently? Would I be doing differently? Instead of thinking so much about what he does ruins your life. I think that's it. I mean, and again, you're the expert in your life, like they always say. There are people out there who truly are suffering, men who, I don't know, demonic possession or whatever you want to call it, influence, and there really are just, you have to get away. That happens for sure. But situations like mine, I had to be honest with myself that it wasn't like that. It wasn't like the only way out is to die or divorce or whatever. It really wasn't. And my mind had built it up to be that way. So I had to be honest with myself that, I was a big contributor to the breakdown. So,
Valerie, see, again, what I see is that your humility, right? Your humility, which takes a vast amount of courage, because it's true that most of us, that sinful pride, right? It's a mortal sin for a reason, but we fall into that pride thinking, oh, it's not me. Like, I'm doing everything right. It's him. If he would just change, everything would be fine. And we know, right, that sin like the concupiscence, we're all kind of prone to it. And our society right now is just all over that, to blame men, bash men. It's the message we've all gotten since we were little girls. And so what we're standing for is truth, and that, God's way of doing marriage. And you're right, like to take the plank out of our own eye before we attack the splinter in his. And so for me, same thing, that it's like I spent 26 years blaming him, and that was my pride. That was pride. And so this is very much a spiritual journey, and being able to grow in humility and get on our paper, look at ourselves, and bring Jesus in to be able to say, help me to transform me. And it's a miracle because he usually shifts as well. And so that's what we see, and that's what you've seen. And so many times you've shared over the last 6 months about how your man just wants to please you. And I'm remembering when you were on vacation and he was buying so many bathing suits for you to get the right one. And it's like, wow, like he was just so generous. And, you really have a good guy. And you're right. We all have our issues. It's just like, I'm not perfect. My husband's not perfect, but God gives us grace, right? Like, my gosh, he forgives me over and over for the same sins over and over. And it's like, we're called to love the same way, and to be able to love our husband and give him grace and forgive, and keep that foundation for our families. That's what we're standing for, is the foundation for the next generation. And so I, again, acknowledge you for doing the hard work, for being here, for being willing to be vulnerable on camera, to inspire other women to be brave as well, and to get support to be able to create the marriage of their dreams. And you are well on your way, Valerie. So thank you.
Okay. I just want to encourage, especially all the women, mothers, and wives in here who are Catholic, and really want to encourage you to take these things to the confessional. I really believe that the graces that are there in the confessional, that the priest who is, Jesus right there with us, is a huge reason that I've been able to work through this. I just can't emphasize how important it is, because, I used to think, and I think a lot of people think, oh, the only thing that goes to confessional is something like legit from the 10 Commandments or whatever. But, the 10 Commandments, they can just be, broken down to like lots of subcategories of things that go under them, okay? And coveting and all that kind of stuff fall under pride and jealousy and all that kind of thing. And anywho, because when I bring these things to the priest, I tell him the thoughts that I have. Oh, something happened.
Oh, you're back.
Wait. Okay. I tell him, the thoughts I have about my husband. I get them out, to the person, to Jesus right there, not just in the middle of the night crying, in my bed. And it really helps. And the last thing the priest told me was, he said, it was very simple. He said, I encourage you, every time you have these feelings about your husband, about him being irresponsible about the money, about what it is that he's doing that supposedly is hurting you, to pray for him. And I've been working on doing that. And that one thing he told me to do has just really helped too, to get out of the NET and the trough and everything. Is just to stop and pray for him. And not in the sense of like, pray for him that he'll do what you want and be the thing you want him to be. No, pray for him because he's struggling with his own issues, and we should pray for each other, for God to help us. And that's how we should be praying for our husbands. Not that they'll turn into what we think they should be, but that, they can find their way just like we are. And so yes, that's the last thing I want to leave y'all with. Go to confession.
Yeah, well, because we don't want to be God, right? We can't be God. We can't fix them. We can't fix our kids. Gosh, we can hardly fix ourselves, but God can. So when we bring God in, right, and certainly praying for one another. So thank you, Val.